Okay, so first things first, what can you actually watch without a TV license? Let's look at it from the other perspective. What did TV licensing say you cannot watch without a TV license? Fundamentally, BBC iPlayer and any live broadcasts, whether from the UK or abroad. And yes, for those of you in Wales, it does include S4C live broadcasts. I've had a lot of messages saying you can watch S4C, but you can't. You can only watch S4C on demand. It says on S4C's website. So what can you watch? Well, as long as you avoid everything live, you can watch pretty much anything you want on YouTube, unless it's obviously a BBC show live, or a mainstream news channel live, or a live sports event, or another event that's broadcast live by an official broadcasting network. And the rules are the same for Netflix, Now TV, Sky TV, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, Hayu, MGM, Paramount Plus, Talk TV, Virgin Media, or just about anything else really. Fundamentally, if you don't want to pay for the license and you want to do it legitimately, don't watch anything live and don't watch anything BBC related, and then you're pretty much safe. Now let's move on to the doorstep visits. Now, as I've said, many of you will get these letters, and in those letters it often says, we're going to be sending somebody out to your property on so-and-so date so that we can actually interview you and find out whether you need a TV license. Now, what we have to bear in mind is, generally speaking, that is literally TV licensing, or Capita, or one of the other companies that BBC use, phishing. Now, to me, what that costs the taxpayer is ridiculous, really, because they should be using it for other things, like making better shows, not spending it sending letters out to people that aren't liable for a license anyway. However, if you are concerned about a doorstep visit or somebody turning up at your property, number one, remove their implied right of access. It's been said before on YouTube by myself, other YouTubers, and on other social media platforms. You don't have to remove their implied right of access. However, if you do so, by writing to TV licensing, probably at Darlington, we all know the address, it's on the back of the envelopes, and express that you clearly removed their implied right of access to your property, and then have yourself a letter printed off ready that fundamentally says the same sort of thing. If one ever does turn up, which I highly doubt after that, then just hand it to them on the doorstep and shut the door. If they do keep harassing you, if they won't leave, if they refuse to get off your property, you can use reasonable force to escort them from your property, but you've got to be careful, because obviously if they get injured in any shape or form, they're going to contact the police and try and get you prosecuted for assault, which is ironic considering it's them that's annoying you. So what I would suggest is, if they won't leave, or they do any damage to your begonias or anything else in your garden, knock over one of your gnomes or something like that, call the police and you say to them, you've got a trespass, you've asked them to leave, you've revoked their implied right of access to actually come into your property and actually knock at your door, and they won't leave. If you're lucky, there might be a police car that's passing in the vicinity, and they'll pull up and they'll actually come out and have a chat with them. But to be honest, if that happens and it actually gets to the point the police turn up, there's a good chance the TV licensing rep will leave anyway. But you have to remember, there has been some confusion. Trespass is a civil offence. It's not a criminal offence in its own right. So yes, you could sue the BBC or TV licensing or Capita or whoever it may be that you decide to sue, but you're not going to get much if you do that, and it's going to be such a long drawn out process, it's not going to get you anywhere. However, if they refuse to leave, and they're intimidating, and they're putting you in fear of anything at all, and they're actively disrupting your family, then you can call the police, because it's aggravated trespass, which is a criminal offence. The likelihood of them actually getting prosecuted is exceptionally slim, unless you just so happen to have an extremely aggressive one who doesn't cooperate with the police when they turn up. And then of course you can always pop a sign up in your living room window, or whatever window faces the front of the property near your front door, removing implied right of access for anybody except pre-arranged visitors and deliveries. Technically speaking, if they see that in the window while they're trying to peek through to see if you've got your TV on, then in theory they should up and leave, and that should be it. And don't forget, you can also complain to the BBC if you get somebody who's a representative of TV licensing who causes distress, upset, or won't leave your property. Okay, moving on. Next, we'll talk about search warrants. Now, I've had a lot of comments with people wondering how they actually get search warrants, what evidence they need, and what happens if they get one. Firstly, you've got to remember, fundamentally, a search warrant application is the same whether they're doing it for TV licensing or whether the police are doing it for another reason. There has to be actual genuine evidence that a crime's being committed for a magistrate to issue a search warrant. Though it is true to say that in the past, TV licensing or Capita, or whoever it may have been, have claimed to use detection equipment to actually get search warrants. I've got written proof of that from Freedom of Information requests. But as a general rule, I think nowadays that's not something they'd be willing to do. And not only that, but there's not been one case that I'm aware of or I can find out about where any detection equipment has ever been used in a prosecution for TV licence evasion. So we're all pretty sure that the TV detector vans were literally just television licensing vans that drove around intimidating and fear-mongering. I've actually had a couple of people that have worked for the BBC and a couple of other people that have had something to do with TV licensing have reached out to me, and they've actually said the TV detector vans were ineffective. And I've actually had somebody reach out to me who signed warrants in the past for various other things. I'm not going to mention names to protect the innocent, but they did say that having signed many, many warrants over a long period of time, they never actually signed one search warrant for TV licence evasion. So I would say, unless you know full well that you're breaking the law doing it, and you know that they've seen you doing it, or you've admitted it, or you've signed their documents saying you've done it, and then you deny them access, I really wouldn't worry about search warrants. In this country, we are innocent until proven guilty, and it is proven guilty, not just because they think you're guilty. By all means, drop your thoughts in the comments below if you've ever had any of their staff turn up at your house, or if you've got any other interesting experiences with TV licensing. I'd love to hear them. The government is planning some legislation that they're going to try and put in place, which will enable them to force the likes of YouTube and other social media to prioritise national news broadcasters such as the BBC, ITV, Channel 4 and broadcasters like that. This is of course so that the government can actually control the news and the narrative. The big downside, of course, is if they manage to push this legislation through and the BBC is flooded onto everybody's home screens and their feed as soon as they open up YouTube, and it autoplays and it's live broadcasts, then technically speaking, you're going to need a TV licence just to use YouTube. Which, to be honest, I think is probably part of their plan. Clearly, they've got other methods they're considering for collection of the TV licence when the Royal Charter is renewed in 2028. Which again, I'm pretty sure they're going to do, especially as they've literally just extended Capita's agreement for their collection services for another 5 years. So that takes us to 2031, way beyond 2028. So the charter is going to get renewed, it's going to be extended, it's going to be fixed probably in place. And they're likely going to make it a civil offence so that they can actually take you to court, process you for not paying for your TV licence as an outstanding debt in the civil courts, and then take out a county court judgment against you instead. And of course, when it comes to the bulk clearing centre, if you don't respond or you don't reply or you don't turn up, then they can proceed in your absence and issue the judgment anyway. Then of course, if the judgment's issued and you don't pay the actual fees and the fine, because there's going to be a fine on top as well, then what they'll probably do is instruct bailiffs to come to your property, because that's what they do when it comes to debts. Don't do that with magistrates' orders, but they do that with debts. Non-payment of a county court judgment will likely lead to bailiffs on your doorstep. And obviously bailiffs have very different powers to what TV licensing officers do. Anyway, in relation to that, we're going to have to wait and see what happens with the TV licence fee, whether it actually becomes a civil penalty for not paying for it, or whether it remains criminal. They're going to sell it to the public like it's better that it becomes a civil offence, but in reality, it's not going to be better being a civil offence. It's going to make a lot of people's lives a lot harder. And a lot of people that don't actually watch BBC or live shows will probably end up having to pay for the TV licence through fear of getting a county court judgment. Okay, moving on. Virtual private networks. Now, I've had a lot of people say, just use a VPN, you can watch BBC, it doesn't matter, they won't find out. And yeah, to a certain degree, that is true. However, the only thing you have to bear in mind with the VPN is, yes, the actual virtual network provider doesn't track what websites you visit, it doesn't track who you log into, it doesn't track what you might be watching, or at least it's not supposed to. However, anything you log into, even if you're using a virtual private network, if you log into your Google account, obviously Google will have a log file of that login. If you log into BBC iPlayer through a virtual private network, they will know you've logged into your BBC iPlayer account. BBC iPlayer will, BBC will. Anything you log into through a VPN, the company you're logging into, the website you're logging onto, will have a record of you logging in, whether you use a VPN or not. They may not know where you are, but they'll know you're using them. So then you just have to ask yourself if it's actually worth the risk. Is BBC that fantastic that you actually need to watch it? Are the live sports events and live other events that important in your life? If so, take out the TV licence before the sporting events start and then cancel it when they're finished. If you pay monthly, you only pay £15 a month. If you pay annually, you can ask for a refund. As somebody that doesn't watch live TV and doesn't watch BBC or anything on it, it's completely irrelevant to me and it doesn't bother me whatsoever. But I'm sure there are people out there that want to watch some shows and they don't want to actually use a VPN or break the law, so they end up paying for the license for the whole year. You don't have to pay for the whole year. Pay for the license how you're going to use it. Anyway, that's enough on TV licensing. It was literally to cover just about everything I've covered over the past few months in one summary video to put some people's minds at rest and give you something to think about in relation to the future of the TV license. If you enjoyed this video, any of the other videos that I've done, and are interested in this topic, then by all means subscribe. But more importantly, don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments below in relation to the TV license and anything to do with TV licensing. Thanks for watching, stay safe, stay legal, but more importantly, stay informed.